conference for the film Foxfire. The film of the official section Foxfire. We're going to commence the press conference. We've got with us the director,
Notre directeur,
Laurent, Cantet, the actresses Madeleine, Bisson and Coseni, and we've got the producers Carole, Scotta and Carole, Benjo, and they are awaiting your questions, and it seems that there's a question already awaiting. Yes, first of all, I would like to ask you, what does this film mean in your career, Laurent Cantet, because of all of the work that you've carried out so far, human resources and so on? Whether this film constitutes a continuity of the work that you've done before, or a rupture or a break. And what about the issue of feminism? Is it a critique? So thank you very much.
Bueno, para mí esta película es, desde luego es una continuidad. Tengo la sensación, como siempre, de haber buscado intentar observar la realidad.
Ah, okay. Yes, as such.
Maintenant, ça marche.
Okay.
Après, c'est vrai que le contexte est différent, le style est très différent.
It is true that the context is different, the style is different,
parce qu'il se passe aux États-Unis.
Because it's a period piece, because it takes place in the US. And I've got the impression that I've always had the same concerns. That is to say, to leave plenty of room for the character to exist and for the situations to develop themselves throughout the plot. And I've got the impression also that I found a way of filming that gives genuine freedom, above all for the actors in the film. That is to say, that we film scenes in continuity, that is to say, trying to respect the energy flows, and that the actors and actresses can have something inside them, and they can contribute this throughout the entire scene. And to me, this seems I've not filmed this, made this film, or shot this film in a different way. The shooting of the film, the way I do it, is very similar than what I experienced in my previous films. It is true. The subject matter is quite comparable, because when one is a teenager or an adolescent, one sees the world and what weapons we have to manufacture in order to confront this world we live in. And also, for this, I felt like filming adolescence again, because I think it's a very decisive and very rich period of time in a person's existence. And a film, I thought it was necessary to deal with this subject matter again in this film. Hi, good morning. A question for the director. Well, two questions for the director. I would like to know how in 2012 you see
la société en
général vis-à-vis the ideas that the film addresses, that say machism, genre, gender issues, and whether
la fin justifie les moyens,
the means, I mean, the end result justifies the means that are used, albeit it doesn't turn out that way at the end.
Alors, d'abord, c'est vrai que le film a été pensé.
Well, initially it is true that the film had been thought of.
Entre les années 50.
Well, the idea was the relationship between the 1950s and the present day. I didn't feel like making a film at any time of making a period piece. No, all the contrary. I felt like making a film which mixes the different periods of time, that say locations, for example. We've gone back to the 50s there, but we've also filmed in a very sort of very current way. The music is, shall we say, is a symptom in the film. It's also a period sort of music. This is the music that the young girls listen to, but it's also very contemporary music at the same time, composed by a contemporary Canadian group, which seems to give the idea that we're a bit outside of the time context, let's say, in a period of time in which, unfortunately, not too much has changed since the 1950s. Obviously, there continues to exist violence towards women and gender violence continues to exist, and violence
existe encore et peut-être même encore plus
also
fort que
there
dans les
also
années
exists
50.
people being being aggression against people that come from a lower class, and I also felt like addressing the 1950s and that American dream that existed, which has turned into a sort of myth, hasn't it? To take this and turn things around, turn things on their head, really, and above all, sort of, to see what's left of this so-called dream. I think that unfortunately, at present,
ces problématiques-là sont malheureusement, encore une fois,
I think things are not going the way we wanted to do, that they want to go, and the problems are much more present now than what they were in the past. And my filmmaking consists in looking at the problems that the society encounters.
Se me ha olvidado la segunda
The second question, whether the final objective justifies the means. Well,
le moment d'utopie,
in the film,
l'arrivée à la ferme,
the utopian moment when they arrive at the
idéal entre elles,
at the farm or the barn, or when they come to the house, when they want to set up that ideal situation for themselves. I think that's the climax of their experience. And then what happens is it deviates, they lose, and it's quite frequent what happens in groups when they start to disband. And it corresponds to a certain, it's like gears, they want to resist themselves to the violence that they have to put up with, but being as tough as possible. But violence towards them becomes even harsher, and they get even tougher, and so therefore it was like a sort of a terrorism, but it's not for me. The conclusion of the experience is the failure of the entire experience that they go through. Hi, good morning. I would like to ask you precisely about what you were just saying now. That is, when all groups end up disbanding due to coexistence problems or because all the impulse to change society neutralizes itself from the inside the group or the band. And I'd like to know what you read into it vis-à-vis the novel by Carole Oates.
Bon, évidemment, le film n'est pas le film le plus optimiste que
yes, undoubtedly, the film is not the most optimistic film I have made, but we've got to be optimistic, undoubtedly, to make movies.
Toute fin du film,
I think that the end of the film gives you the idea that these small flames that were started up, that shooting star, the hope that she was the shooting legs hasn't died. Let's say she was like a shooting star. They feel like recognizing her and seeing her in the newspaper photo. They want to hope that the ideal continues to live somewhere else, and that helps them to live, albeit there is a social determinism which is very powerful and makes each of them find their place. Maddie, who we have felt, who seemed to be much more intellectual, has turned into an astronomist. Rita has turned into a housewife, as we imagined that could happen, like Maddie, but they've lived through something that can't be replaced, something that continues, that they continue to live through the photo of legs and what she represented. Perhaps it's not as closed as one imagines from the outset. The relationship with Carole Oates' film, yeah, well, it's a book that I read it was a coincidence, just by chance. Somebody, for my birthday, someone gave me the book. I started and I couldn't stop reading it. And the truth is, very quickly, I felt the relationships that could exist between the book and my filmmaking. First of all, I wanted to film adolescence again, because the experience with the film La Classe, which I did, was an enormous experience for me, and also to feel that all of the political issues that go through the book responded to my questions, or the questions I was asking myself, that what hope can a person have? How we build a personality through our experiences and not through dogmatism, but albeit legs has to has a teacher in Father Thériault. We notice that it makes it all much more complicated. What I was interested in was to film commitment before finding or seeking the keys to achieve it. In my opinion, this is something which belongs to adolescence. So we try to do things, and our reactions are very epidemic, shall we say. One launches oneself, and it's like running into a wall, and then we take a step back. I think it's all very, very well described in the book. Joyce Carol Oates' book is a book of hope that stems from each of the characters, the mechanisms they have to fight and to struggle against what they do. And what I've wanted to get as close as I can to the plot of the book.
Je vais demander en anglais
deux questions
pour les deux actrices. Bravo pour le travail, surtout vous, Katie, avec votre rôle. Comment pouvez-vous, votre relation, je ne sais pas pourquoi je traduis puisque tu comprends l'anglais.
Second question is for the director.
Alors,
as we have seen here in the festival as well, the film of Olivier Assayas, which is as well going back to come to an experience which might be a contemporary experience as well, not just a historical thing. I'd like to know, is there maybe in world cinema or in French cinema a kind of new rebellious spirit or new politics, in your opinion? Some kind of longing for good violence, to put it in this provocative formula?
Well, the girls in the gang are very young, and I think when I was reading the book and going to the auditions and just thinking about the character Maddie, she's very insecure, as most girls are at that age. And as I was reading the book and reading over the script and looking at all the scenes, it was very easy for me to relate to her in that way, because every girl growing up goes through that phase where they're so insecure and they're not very sure of themselves, and they need to take that step into adulthood and to prove themselves as a woman and find their own identity. So I think that's what resonated with me the most about Maddie.
And the same goes with Rita as well. She had a lot of insecurities, I think in a different way than the character Maddie. And for example, she always needed to wear makeup, she always needed to wear clothes that were a bit tight, and she tried to get attention from boys when that was a bit over her head, and she didn't really realize the consequences that could happen. And I also remember when I was a teenager, I loved being with my girlfriends and having that group of girls, and you could grow up together, mature together, go through experiences together. And so that really pulled a heartstring with me, because I remember doing that with my girlfriends and going through hard times and having them to lean back on.
Et moi maintenant. Non, moi je pense que tout le temps et peut-être de plus en plus, le cinéma reflète l'état de la société.
But more and more so, cinema reflects the state of society. And the more problematic society is, the cinema and movie making is going to look at those problems. Now we're attending a sort of regression or going back from policy to cinema, which is a symptom of a society which needs to think in itself and about itself. And I think that cinema participates in this. And I think this is great. I think this is something that's just quite good or positive. And talking about Father Thériault, or Thériault, Why do you make him disappear? That historical memory, you make him disappear relatively early. Why? Why isn't there more contact or a more relationship with legs in this character? I think that what interests me about Father Thériault is that he does contribute some theoretical keys or elements.
Je ne pense pas que Legs soit
I don't think that Legs
forcément très marqué par lui. Elle utilise ses phrases, des éléments
excessively influenced by him. She uses some of his phrases, some lines of thought which will help her to develop. But I think she's the one that does the work. She's going to experience things and establish the relationship with what she lives and what Father Thériault has taught her. And I would even dare say that it makes it even more complex. Like, for example, in the scene on the roof, for example, just when she gets out of jail, she starts to think about Thériault, said, Father Thériault may be right. It could be bad because we have to sell ourselves, but it's much more complicated than this, because women, and she continues, and the truth is she applies some of the things that she learned, and that's what I was interested in, that it provides the idea that the character had existed, that Legs had listened to him, but as of there, that's where she started to do things. It wasn't Father Thériault that made her grow, but her experiences, to experience things as she lived them. Further questions, please? Hi, I would like to ask the actresses how they felt during the shoot of the film,
aux actrices comment elles se sentaient pendant le tournage.
And what was the group of the girls like? Did you do any improvisation? Did you leave room for them to experience with their characters, or was it all more strictly to the script?
I'd say a lot of it was based on improvisation. Between the months March until July, we had done many, many rehearsals with Laurent, and we improvised many scenes and created them together. And we all made a very close bond with each other because we knew each other for so long. I mean, we had done auditions and then rehearsals from October until July. So it's a very, very long process. And once we started filming, we were already so close. So we really had that real girl gang connection once we were ready to film.
I think it was really good that we did a lot of it from improv because it made the characters a lot more real. And we were able to bring our own personal emotions into all the actions and the words and everything that we did as characters. And just like Maddie said, we were all so close, and from the first time we all got together, something just clicked. And we all just got along so well. We all worked very well together. We brought out things in each other. And it's very important to have that group dynamic if you're going to stick a whole bunch of girls together for a few months and expect them to work so close together for so long. But I think Laurent did a really excellent job in helping us to become our characters and helping us work together. And he's very, very patient with us. So.
Definitely patient.
Yeah.
Moi, j'ai envie de rajouter quelque chose, c'est-à-dire que les personnages.
I'm going to add something. Let me add something. That is, the characters, as they're filmed,
du scénario, donc
they were born directly from the script and from the book, and partly from the book, obviously. Well, but what I would like to say is they were changed and modified quite a lot thanks to everything that happened through these improvisations, and also, and thanks to the progressive, how I progressively started to know them all. And I think the most important thing about the changes that have taken place was Legs. Legs in the film is someone who's much more open, much more direct, shall we say. She's much more direct in the book, much more open, but Raven The actress proposed a much more interiorized, sort of, a bit more distant and aloof type character, and I realized immediately that the magnetism of the character could go through, be a bit more enigmatic through her silences and her being more aloof. And instead of fighting against this, I preferred to construct the character around what she was contributing, and that's what's happened to each and every one of the actresses that have played their roles in this film.
Further questions, please?
What draws my attention?
Oui,
in the ending, just a detail.
Vers la fin du film, non?
La
photo sur le journal, qui donne la possibilité que Lex soit encore vivante et qu'en plus elle soit à Sierra Maestra. Ce détail était dans le livre.
Was this already in the book, or did you contribute it to the screenplay, or what's the sense of this?
Quel est le sens? Est-ce pour voir une utilité politique plus profonde
what happened
pour qu'elle soit plus masculine d'une certaine façon?
Dans le livre, effectivement,
effectively so. In the book,
la grande question
the photo
posée à moi,
does exist. The question I asked myself was
être sûr ou pas sûr que c'était elle.
Whether
ce qui m'intéresse, c'est qu'elles ont toutes les deux de reconnaître Legs.
What I was interested in was that they both were feeling like seeing Legs again. That's because the whole storyline is extended.
Avec la disparition de Legs.
The story doesn't stop with the disappearance of Legs. The flame that was commenced or started continues to be alive, and the photo is the proof. It's not a masculine image at all, no. Amongst the gorillas, Cuban gorillas, there were many women there as well. No, it has nothing to do with all of that. But it's more make a dream last longer, not only due to the photo that they see, because I hope there's always a doubt in your mind whether it is or it isn't, but especially with their desire, the desire for the story to continue.
Hi, I have two questions. I think the group dynamic in this movie is really interesting. And which characters was important for you to have to create this group? And the relationship between them, what does that affect of the ending of the story? And my other question is, in the movie, you say that it's hard to know where to start to begin a story. Why did you choose to start this story in the 1950s in USA?
Je vais commencer par la deuxième, comme ça je l'ai encore en tête.
Yes, I'd like to start with the second question.
Les années 50, d'abord, c'est le livre.
Well, in the 1950s, first of all, the novel
me l'a indiqué.
The book
il y a plusieurs raisons
tells me basically that at the start of the 1950s, and there's several reasons for this, and the fact that in the 1950s the US is going through that sort of American dream situation, and
de ce rêve me semblait intéressant. L'autre raison, c'est aussi
and to see the results of that American dream, I think that's an interesting side to it. And it was a very anti-communist period in the US, and the ideal of this group of girls has to do with communism, albeit it's not a dogmatic type of communism of Father Thériault. But what interested me was to confront them to this a prohibited doctrine at that time, and on the other hand, it's also true that there is a social control exercised upon teenagers nowadays is much harsher than, and it's practically improbable that may occur again, but also it may be a myth at the same time. I feel like believing in the possibility that this story could be true, but also the truth. Well, if you're 15 years old and you haven't got any parents, to have the decision of renting or buying a car or to make some money, a few bucks,
c'est quelque chose qui était très important pour la narration et que j'ai.
And come out with this instrument for freedom was also an important part of the narrative.
¿Más preguntas, por favor? ¿Il n'y a pas de questions?
No further questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love you for my life, 'cause you're a friend of mine. Oh, and when my life is over, remember when we were together.